everybody, it's Tara here from Tiny Teas and welcome back to Tiny Teas Bedtime Stories. Remember, this first bit of the series is The Wind in the Willows, and now this is chapter 3, The Wild Wood. So, who do you think we might meet in the wild wood? What sort of creatures live in the woods? Well, let's have a think. We might find some owls in a woodland. We might find some cheeky little foxes in a wild wood. We would definitely find some bunny rabbits in a wild wood. And, of course, don't forget who lives in the wild wood. It's Mr. Badger. Well, I'm going to be using all of my puppets from Puppets by Post, but remember, if you've got any toys that you would like to join in with, please do so, or join in with the actions with me. Chapter 3, The Wild Wood. The mole had long waited to make the acquaintance of the badger. He seemed, by all accounts, to be such an important person. But whenever the mole mentioned his wish to the rat, the water rat would always say, Badger will turn up someday or another. He's always turning up. And then I'll introduce you, the best of fellows. Oh, but, couldn't we ask him here for dinner or something? Asked the mole. Oh, he wouldn't come, replied the rat simply. Badger hates society, and invitations, and dinner, and all that sort of thing. Well then, supposing we go and call on him, suggested the mole. I'm sure he wouldn't like that at all, said the rat, quite alarmed. But he's very shy, and I'm sure he'd be offended. Besides, it's out of the question, because he lives in the very middle of the wild wood. And the mole had to be content with this, but the badger never came along. And it was not until summer was over and the cold and frost kept them much indoors that the mole found his thoughts dwelling back to thinking of the badger. And the badger lived alone by himself in his hole in the middle of the wild wood. In the wintertime, the rat slept a great deal, retiring early to bed and rising very late in the afternoon. And he sometimes scribbled poetry or did other little jobs. And of course, there was all of the other animals that all dropped in for a chat. And it was lovely. But the mole fancied a bit of an adventure. And there was plenty to talk about on those short wintry days. But the mole had a lot of time on his hands. And so one afternoon, while the rat was snoozing away by the fire, the mole formed a resolution to go out by himself and explore the wild wood. And perhaps strike up an acquaintance with Mr. Badger. I think we're going to go on an adventure. Would you like to come? Well then, to go on an adventure into the wild wood, we're going to need a few things. So make sure you've got your hat on, and your scarf, and maybe some gloves because it might get cold, and some big boots, and a big coat. And don't forget to bring a rucksack, maybe with a camera in so that we can take some pictures, and some snacks, and a nice hot drink. What will yours be? I think I'm going to bring some hot chocolate with me. Well then everybody, let's set off into the wild wood. With great cheerfulness, the mole pushed on towards the wild wood. Let's take a look around and see what we can see. What animals can we see? Well, there was nothing to alarm him at first entry. Twigs crackle under his feet. Crack, crack, crack. And logs tripped him over. Ooh! But that was all fun and exciting. But everything was still now. Shh. And the light seemed to be draining away like floodwater. Oh, it's starting to get dark now. Everybody get out your torch. And then the faces began. It was over his shoulder. Ooh. And at first he thought he saw a little face. A little evil wedge-shaped face. And when he turned and confronted it, it vanished. Have you ever thought that you might have seen a face sometimes? I think it's just our imagination playing with us, isn't it? Well, he quickened his pace. Everybody walk a little bit faster now. Telling himself cheerily not to begin imagining things. And he passed another hole, and then another, and another, and then, yes, certainly a little narrow face with hard eyes had flashed up for an instant from a hole, and then it was gone. Who could it be? A badger? A mole? Maybe if he could only get away from the holes in the banks, he thought, there would be no more faces. Phew! And he swung off the path and plunged into the untrodden places of the wood. And then the whistling began. Can you whistle? Lick your lips and put your mouth like this. And then blow. Very faint and shrill it was, but somehow it made him hurry forward. And then the pattering began. Can you make some pattering noises with your hands or feet? He thought it was only falling leaves at first. So slight and delicate was the sound of it. And then as it grew, it took a regular rhythm, the pat, pat, pat of little feet, still a very long way off. It grew and it multiplied, till from every quarter as he listened anxiously, leaning this way and that, it seemed to be closing in on him. And as he stood still, a rabbit came running hard towards him through the trees, and he waited, expecting him to stop his pace or swerve from him into a different direction. But instead, the animal brushed him as it dashed past. "Get out of this, you fool! Get out of it!" The mole heard him mutter as he swung round a stump and disappeared down a friendly burrow. Well, in panic, he began to run as well. Ready, everybody? Let's run like the mole. He ran up against things, he fell over things and into things, and he darted under things. And at last, he took refuge into a dark, deep hollow of an old beech tree, which offered some shelter. Meanwhile, the rat, warm and comfortable, dozed by the fireside. But then a coal slipped, and the fire crackled and sent up a spurt of flame, and he woke with a start. And then he looked around for Mole to ask him if he knew a good rhyme for something or other, but the mole was not there. Then he called, "Moley! Moley!" several times, and receiving no answer, he got up and went out into the hall. "Moley! Moley!" The mole's cap was missing from the peg. The rat left the house and carefully examined the muddy surface on the ground outside. He was hoping to find the mole's tracks, and there they were, sure enough, leading directly into the wild wood. Uh-oh. The rat looked very grave and stood deep in thought for a minute or two. And then he set off into the wild wood at a smart pace. Ready, everybody? Let's go! He made his way manfully through the length of the wood, calling out cheerily, "Moley! Moley! Moley! Where are you? It's me! It's old Rat!" And he had patiently hunted through the wood for an hour or more, when at last, to his joy, he heard a little answering cry. "Oh, Ratty, is that really you?" And the rat crept into the hollow. And there he found the mole, exhausted and still trembling. "Oh, Rat," he cried, "I've been so frightened, you can't even think." "Oh, I quite understand," said the rat. "But surely the brave Mr. Toad wouldn't mind coming in here by himself, would he?" inquired the mole. "Old Toad?" said the rat, laughing. "He wouldn't show his face in here, not for a whole hateful of golden guineas, Toad wouldn't." And the mole was greatly cheered by the sound of Rat's careless laughter. Hearing your friends laugh always makes you feel more comfortable, doesn't it? So the mole got well into the dry leaves and stretched himself out, and presently dropped off into a sleep. When at last Mole woke up, much refreshed and in his usual spirits, the rat said, "Now then, I'll just take a look outside, and if everything's quiet, then we really must be off." "Oh, what's up, Ratty?" asked the mole. "Snow is up," replied the rat briefly. "Or rather, down. It's snowing hard." And the mole came and crouched beside him and looked out. "We can't sit here very long," said the rat. "We shall have to make another push for it and do something or other. The cold is too awful for anything, and the snow will soon be too deep for us to wade through." So once more they got to their feet and struggled down into the dell, and they hunted around for a cave. And they were investigating until, oh, crack! Suddenly the mole tripped, ow, and fell forward. Oh, my leg," he cried. "Oh, my poor old shin. Oh." And he sat and nursed his leg with his two front paws. "Oh, poor old mole," said the rat kindly. "You don't seem to be having much luck today, do you? Let's have a look at that leg." And once they'd nursed his leg, they went on looking for more shelter or a way to get out of the snow. Suddenly the rat cried, "Hooray!" and then "Hooray, hooray, hooray, hooray!" and fell to a little jiggle in the snow. "What have you found, Ratty?" asked the mole. "Come and see," said the delighted rat as he jigged on. And the rat attacked a snowbank beside him. He was digging with fury, and the mole scraped busily too. And after 10 minutes of hard work, they struck something that sounded hollow. What could it be? In the side of what had seemed to be a snowbank stood a solid-looking door, painted a dark green. An iron bell hung up by the side, and below it, on a small brass plate, neatly engraved in the square capital letters, they could read the sign, Mr. Badger. Shall we ring Mr. Badger's doorbell? Gling, 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 gling. They waited patiently for what seemed a very long time, stamping in the snow to keep their feet warm. Can you stamp in the snow? Oh. And at last they heard the sound of slow, shuffling footsteps. And it seemed like someone walking in carpet slippers. "Now, the very next time this happens," said a gruff and suspicious voice, I shall be exceedingly angry. Who is it this time, disturbing people on such a night? Speak up!" "Oh, Badger!" cried the rat. "Let us in, please. It's me, Rat, and my friend Mole, and we've lost our way in the snow." "What, Ratty? My dear man!" exclaimed the Badger in quite a different voice. "Come along in, both of you, at once. Why, you must be perished. Well, I never lost in the snow. And in the wild wood too. Oh, and at this time of night. Oh, come in, both of you." Well, we've finally got to Mr. Badger's house. What could happen next? Well, find out next week for Chapter 4 of The Wind in the Willows. And this is called Mr. Badger. And as this is a bedtime story, what you could do is put on some woodland sounds, close your eyes and think about all of the different animal sounds that you can hear, and it might help you get to sleep. For now, I hope you have very, very sweet, pleasant dreams, and I'll see you all very soon. Goodbye!